Okay, we're going to talk about classes today. I've already created a folder called classes, and I've created an index.html that loads my script, and I've got a script.js, and we're going to get coding here. So a class is basically its own construct, and we're going to build our first class here. We'll call it class person. And in earlier versions of JavaScript, before ES 2015, you would use a constructor function, which operates very much like a class. And I'll probably do a video that talks about constructor functions at some point. But for now, we're going to use a class. And I've created this class person. And I'm going to create a function. It's a method. A method is a function that's part of something else. In this case, it's part of a class. And this is going to be a constructor function. And the constructor function is automatically run when a new instance of a class is created. And we're going to define what sort of things need to be passed in when we create a new instance of the person class, or a new person. And so we're going to say that we need a name and an age. And that's probably a pretty good start for a person. The next thing we're going to do is inside the constructor. Remember, the constructor function or constructor method is going to be run immediately after we create a new instance of person. We generate a new person. So I'm going to say this dot name equals name, and this dot age equals age. Now, what that does is that takes these parameters that are going to get passed in when we generate the new person, and it's going to assign name. Well, it's going to assign an instance version of name, this dot name, to be equal to name, because we're going to be creating multiple instances of person, and by creating instance variables with this dot in front of it, what that means is each instance will have its own unique values. So that'll make a little more sense soon. But ultimately, we're making sure that name and age are getting passed in. And I think let's also add this dot species. And for now, we will say our species is human. So any person we create is going to be a human for now. And let's give this a try. So to work with this, I can create a new person, and we'll say let Sally equal new person, and we will pass in Sally's name and Sally's age, and she'll be created. And if I console log Sally, let's do that. We'll see what we get. So refresh. Oh, Sally is a person. She's not your typical object. She is a specific type of object, a person construct, and she has a name, an age, and a species. And that species is human, because we said that all persons that we create are human. And, you know, Sally's 28 right now, and if I wanted to make a change, I can do Sally.age plus equals 1, similar to how we did before with an object. And then I can console.log Sally. And we'll refresh, and you can see, yay, she had her birthday. Okay. And we can create multiple people. If I wanted to, I could create Bob or Harry or whatever, and just create a new person. Now, I'm going to get a little more complex here. Classes are really useful. What makes classes even more useful is understanding inheritance. So person is our base class, but I'm now going to create another class. We'll create a monster class. And in the monster class, we are going to say monster extends person. And what that means is that monster is inheriting the various qualities of person. And so I can sit here now and we'll create a constructor with name, age, and species, because monsters aren't automatically going to be human. In fact, none of my monsters are going to be human. So we've got a constructor, and when we create a new monster, it's going to take a name, an age, and a species. So let's play with this for a minute. I've got my constructor set up, and inside person, name and age already kind of do what I want. And it would be nice if I could go ahead and tell the monster constructor, treat those the same way that you do in person. And we do that by using super. And so I'm going to say super name and age. And that will automatically take name and pass it into a this.name, because that's what we do with name in the person constructor, and it'll do the same thing with age. And so age will get passed into an instance version of age, this.age. And so now we've got name and age dealt with. We just need to deal with species. And so this.species is going to equal species. And we need to do this because in the original person class, we had assigned species to human. And here we're actually passing something in to be the species. So to create a new monster, we'll say let Harry equal new person. And Harry, age 42, species werewolf. And if we, excuse me, I made a mistake here. I was creating Harry as a person, but he's a werewolf. He is a monster. But monsters are people too. They just have additional characteristics. So let's go ahead and console log Harry. Let's see what we get. So I refresh. There is Sally. We outputted Sally twice because we gave her a birthday, and then we have a monster named Harry. And there it is. So we have two constructs here, two classes. We have a person, and then we have a monster that inherits the qualities of a person, but has some additional qualities, the ability to create a unique species. So I'm going to play a little bit more with this. Right now we've got a constructor function, or a constructor method, because it's part of the person class. I'm going to create another one. Let's create a speaks method. And if you run the speaks method, it will say console.log, and I'm going to use those backticks again so that I can do a string template. And I'll say $name, so it plugs in, well, excuse me, not name, but this.name. So it's going to plug in the name of whichever instance we have, says, hi, how are ya? Nice weather we're having. And let's close that quote so it says it in quotes there. And to actually test this, we can have Sally say it, and Sally will say, Sally speaks. And we run this, and it says, Sally says, hi, how are you? Nice weather we're having. Now, because monster is inheriting from person, it too inherits this speaks method. So I can also have Harry say, Harry speaks. Come back here. Harry says, hi, how are you? Nice weather we're having. Now, Harry's a monster. He's probably not going to be quite so friendly. So what we can do is we can overwrite this speaks. And we can give monster its very own speaks. And so I will go ahead and do that. Create our curly braces. And we'll say console.log. Use our backtick so that we can plug in this .name says, oh, putting that in the wrong place, there we go, grr. And so monsters say grr, while persons say, hi, how are ya? Nice weather we're having. And so Harry says grr. And if you really wanted to, you want to get crazy now, we could go ahead and create another class, a zombie class, that extends monster, which means it's going to inherit the characteristics from, oh, putting parens there when I don't need them. It's going to inherit the characteristics from both monster and person. So we create a constructor class. We will say name, age, and we don't need to put species in here because it's a zombie. And so let's go ahead and say super. We'll have name and age treated the same. And this dot species is going to equal zombie. And we should probably overwrite our speaks again. Console.log, because rather than saying grr, I think perhaps I want a zombie to say brains. Because I think that's what zombie's saying. Oh, let's close our quotes there so it looks good. We'll create a new zombie. Let Bob equal new zombie. And that zombie is going to be name of Bob, age of 21, and we don't need to say that he's a zombie. We know he's a zombie. Console, well, we don't have to bother with console.log. Let's just do Bob speaks. Bob says brains. Now, let's go back to person we've got these other two classes that inherit from each other there, and they all come back to person. They are derived classes from person. So let's add a new method here. And I think what I'm going to just say is we'll call it info. And if you do this info method on a person, it's going to spit back some information. So let's see, what's it going to say? Let's have it say, we'll use backticks again. Let's get some information about people. $, this dot name. Don't forget to do that, that's important. Console.log their age, $, this.age, console.log species, $, this.species. So there you have it. Let's see what happens if we come down here and we say, Sally, you know, I'm going to put one more line in there. I'm going to put a separator in. So let's say console.log, and I'm just going to put a bunch of dashes. Okay, so Sally info, Harry info, and Bob info. And we can use info on all of these because they all are inheriting ultimately from person. Even though Bob is inheriting from Bob, which is part of the zombie class, inherits from the monster class, which inherits from the person class. All of them still have this one method because it is the initial class that everything's inheriting from. Okay, so that's classes, and hopefully you can see some value there.